Have you ever really thought about what happens to a good deed after you do it? Where does a prayer actually go? Well, our source material today has this incredible idea. Our deeds go on a profound spiritual journey, one that puts our deepest, truest intentions to the ultimate test. So let's follow that journey and find out what it really takes for our worship to be accepted. Okay, so first things first, we have to understand the sheer weight of what we're doing. The source material puts it this way. When we worship, we're not just, checking a box. We are presenting an offering to the ultimate king, the most glorious. And right from the get-go, the text hits us with this really humbling reality. It sets up this huge contrast between our own nature, which, let's be honest, is imperfect and full of flaws, and the absolute, total perfection of the divine. And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If we are so flawed, and the one we're worshiping is completely flawless, how do we even begin to bridge that gap? How can our deeds, which are kind of touched by our own imperfections, ever be considered worthy? And you can really see that contrast laid out right here. On one side, you have the limitless, unfathomable greatness of God. And on the other side, well, that's us, our fragile condition, full of faults, yet somehow given this immense responsibility to present something pure. This point is driven home so powerfully in a famous saying. Even the most perfect of all creation, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made it crystal clear that our actions alone aren't our ticket. In the end, it all, and I mean all, comes down to divine mercy. So to help us wrap our heads around this whole dynamic, between our efforts and God's acceptance, the source gives us this powerful allegory, the journey of a single good deed as it travels up through the heavens. Now, this story comes from a hadith. That's a narration from the Prophet, peace be upon him. He told it to his companion Waz, and it paints this incredibly vivid picture of the spiritual screening process that every single one of our good deeds has to go through. So picture this. Someone does a good deed, and it starts to rise from the earth, and it's shining with a light that's as bright as the sun. But its journey is not a straight shot to the top. Nope. It has to pass through a whole series of gates, and each one is a test of its purity and the real sincerity of the person who did it. Each of these heavenly gates has an angel guarding it, and each one represents a really common spiritual flaw, a flaw that can completely cancel out our worship, no matter how amazing it might look on the outside. So the deed rises up and arrives at that first gate, the entrance to the first heaven, and there it's met by the angel of backbiting. The very first test is for the tongue. Just think about that. Gossip, slander, talking about people behind their backs. If the person who did the deed was guilty of this, the journey for their beautiful shining deed, it stops right there. It gets thrown right back in their face. Now, if the deed manages to pass those first couple of tests, it keeps on climbing. But at the third gate, it comes face to face with the angel of pride. This one is all about the why. Why did you do it? Was it truly out of humility for God? Or was there even a tiny part of you that wanted to feel a little bit superior to other people? If pride was anywhere in the mix, the deed gets rejected. So the deed keeps ascending, passing more and more tests. And then, at the fifth gate, it runs into the angel of jealousy. Wow, this test cuts right to the state of the heart. A person could be out there doing the most incredible acts of worship, but if their heart is secretly burning with envy for what God has given to someone else, their good deeds are stopped cold. Okay, so imagine this deed has somehow made it through all the lower heavens. It arrives at the seventh heaven. It's described as being adorned like a bride, just shining. But there's one last guard to face, the angel of fame. This final gatekeeper is checking for the desire for reputation. Was this act done purely for God? Or was it done to get status, to be known as a good person, to get praise from other people? If so, it's cast down. But hold on, because the journey still isn't over, and this is where the story gets really interesting. Because in this narration, a deed actually manages to pass all 7 of these gates. It's free from backbiting, pride, jealousy, showing off, you name it. It looks absolutely perfect. The thousands of angels who have been escorting this deed are just amazed. They're completely blown away by how perfect it is. So they bring it all the way into the divine presence, and they testify. They swear that this action is pure and was done only for God's sake. But this is where we get the ultimate reality check. God tells the angels that they can only see the outward action, but he sees into the deepest, most hidden corners of the heart. And he reveals that even with this seemingly perfect deed, the core intention wasn't for him. The person deceived everyone, they even deceived the angels, but they could not deceive the one who knows all secrets. So after hearing about a spiritual audit that intense, you've got to be thinking, right? If the standard is that high, what hope do any of us have? How can we ever get it right? And look, you're not alone in feeling that way. That is the exact question the prophet's companion, Muaz, asked. The source says he burst into tears after hearing this story. It's the question that's on all of our minds. And thankfully, the prophet, peace be upon him, didn't leave him or us hanging. And the prophet's advice is it's a beautiful, practical roadmap. It's not about achieving some impossible spiritual state. It's about real, tangible, daily actions. Guard your tongue. Check your own ego. Avoid showing off. Focus your heart. It's all about purifying our character, because that's the only way we can ever hope to purify our intentions. And in the end, that whole incredible journey of a deed, it brings us right back to this one single, essential question. It's a question we have to ask ourselves not just once, but with every prayer, every good word, every single act of kindness we do. Is this for the world, or is it for the Lord of the worlds?